When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. You understand me? I was born black. I live black. And I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey, man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions asked. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
Hey, Uhuru, peace, family. Yes, I just want to be free. So the struggle continues. Welcome to another We Charge Colonialism podcast. I am Ikemba Jore of We Charge Colonialism Media Think Tank. And for those who are tapping in for the first time, we are a Pan-Afrikan anti-colonial think tank. So most of what we do is addressing colonialism, colonial capitalism, and its impact on African people and things that we can do to liberate ourselves. So we want to make sure that we putting out that kind of information, you know, as it pertains to the African experience. I'm also, you know, an African internationalist. I follow the philosophy, the theoretical framework and philosophy of Omali Yeshitela with African internationalism, which, you know, is clear, on its explanation of the reality of African people. How do we get to this point that we are at right now as African people? And it is through, you know, the enslavement, the colonization of African people. It is through the annexation of indigenous people lands, African people's lands, right? And they were able to build and develop a society through that oppression and exploitation. So I always say, like, the Europeans' whole, you know, existence is based off of the oppression and exploitation of African people. Their wealth, their theoretical framework, their whole train of thought, you know, it revolves around that oppression and exploitation, you know, that relationship that they have with us. And it goes both ways. So it's vice versa. And I think that's something that Dr. Emerson Wilson really gets into in a lot of his work when he's addressing the African psychology, and how, you know, there's this false consciousness that we have based on this relationship that we have, and constantly, I guess you can go to Du Bois, right? Constantly having this internal conflict between our being African people and seeing ourselves as African people, but also, you know, seeing ourselves through the lens of the European, of the colonizer. And so that eternal conflict that we have, I would say, you know, we are constantly at battle, and we have been losing that battle overall. You know, you can, like, really see in the way that we engage in politics, the colonizers' politics. Hey, Uhuru, that's what's up. Georgia in the building. Hey, Uhuru, yeah, peace out, everybody that's tapping in. Yeah, I'm kind of just like going on a rant right now. I ain't even get started. I don't know. I just started off just like ranting, but I just want y'all to know what I'm about, what this channel is about. Hey, peace, sugar. Welcome. Karibu. Caribou, welcome to another one. So yeah, man, I got feel like I got a lot that I want to tap into. I don't know how I'm gonna do it all, in the time that I have, but we'll see how it flows because we're covering Black on Black violence, Dr. Emerson Wilson's work. But before I get into that, I kind of want to just like look at some information, go over some information that's going to lead into that discussion. So, going to the topic, does capitalism create the Black criminal? Addressing that question. And, for those who tapped in to the last discussion, we were talking about all right, well, it was a rhetorical question, but it was something to get folks, listening and to be a part of this conversation. But whether Black people are innately violent, or is it the system, or innately criminal, I should say, or is it the system? And of course, people who tap into this and have that level of consciousness to know the causes of the criminal actions in our community, the violence in our community that we perpetrate against one another. We know the impact that the system has on us. But the colonizer and those who think like the colonizer, those who think like the ruling class, the bourgeois, they tend to blame the victims of colonialism, the victims of slavery, right? And they don't, they don't like the use of that word, right? And they try to play these mind games and be like victim mentality, right? Can you imagine that they would use that during slavery? The slave got a victim mentality. That's why they can't get anything done. All the time though, they got their boot on the neck of African people. So we can't get caught up in these mind games that the colonizer likes to play. And Dr. Emerson Wilson, he really, he critiques that. He dissects the European, the colonizers' methods, the tricks that they use to like really get us to really get us to start thinking like the colonizer and not seeing ourselves as a separate African people that needs to come up with the solutions to our problems through an African lens, through an African perspective, an African a black. What Dr. Bobby E. Rice said, we need a black social theory, an African social theory to address our problems. So with that being said, man, I'm real excited. Appreciate y'all jumping on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Y'all already going in with the comments. I'm gonna check the comments out in a second. But make sure you subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here. I don't know why we're not at 3,000. I don't know why we're not at 50,000, to be honest. But it's all about consistency. So I will admit there's some things that we can do to be more consistent to build numbers. But I'm excited because there's people I've been in contact with that want to join the We Charge Colonialism team. So we're about to grow. We haven't been like bringing people into the fold for a while. But we're about to start bringing people into the fold and really, build the organization, build the institution, and what it is that we do. So I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited because we're going in 2025, and I'm just seeing Black radicals, old and new. I feel like there's revitalization in our movement. And being a part of that as well, I feel revitalized because it could, doing this work can be demoralizing. And I still often become demoralized, more so with what I'm seeing in our community here in Philadelphia. I go back and forth from Philadelphia to New York. And like the last week or two, what I've been seeing in Philadelphia has been demoralizing, because I'm seeing young Black men going to the topic that we're talking about, right? But I'm seeing the violence that we're perpetrating against one another. Like, I'm like fights, gunshots, all of this. Yeah, I'm like in the mix of these things, right? But I'm seeing the deli, and I'm seeing the youth, um, who the other day there was a fight that broke out like right in front of the police. The police were parked, got out of the car, and the argument that was going on between these young, it was about 15, maybe 20, 15, 20 of them. The argument that was going on, it kept happening. And when the police walked up, one of the guys ran, and then there was someone who chased them and swung on them. I'm talking about like these guys were fighting. The police couldn't even stop them from fighting. The police just walked away, got in the car. I guess they called for backup, and a bunch of cars were coming. Police cars were coming, but this fight persisted. They kept on going. I'm saying to myself, I'm like, man, when we were young, like the police, if we see the police, we would get out of we would get out of Dodge, you know, because nobody wants to get locked up, right? But you know, this guy was swinging like he wanted to go to jail, didn't care about the consequences, which, you know, is this is the mindset of our youth, you know, right now. And the gun violence is crazy, right? You know, it's a lot different from when I was growing up as far as the reasons why. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that in particular. I could talk about that a lot. So I don't want to take away from the time of getting into this information. But, you know, just going back to my initial thought of 2025, we're coming up on a centennial of so many of our great thinkers, organizers, leaders. And, you know, Malcolm X, of course, like, that's probably the most notable, right? As far as you know, people know that Malcolm X's centennial of his birth is coming up, and people are organizing around that, right? 100 years since his birth in 1925. But also Frantz Fanon. You know, Frantz Fanon is going to be the centennial of Frantz Fanon's birth, the centennial of Medgar Evers' birth, the centennial of Robert F. Williams' birth, and the centennial of Patrice Lumumba. You know, those are 5, and you know, there's probably some others that I can't think of right now, but those are 5 like heavyweight, you know, Pan-Africanist, revolutionary thinkers and organizers, right? Robert F. Williams, Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers. You know, it's all and the names themselves, right? These are heavyweights. So, you know, just like really excited to like again uplift their names and their works, and to bring people into political life and making them conscious of who these people are and what they were about. So there's going to be some organizing around that, and plus some, you know, some Black radical conferences that are going to be taking place next year. Real excited, can't wait to and I'll talk more about that as I continue to do these podcasts. But I just, you know, I say all that to say, tap in, make sure you tap in, get organized, join organization, and be a part of this movement, you know, because we have to liberate ourselves from you know, these colonizers. So many other names I want to call them, but I'm trying to be nice. It's like the nicest thing I can call them right now. With that being said, man, let me get into this. So first thing I wanted to pull up was this article that speaks about capitalism and violence, right? It's a really short article. I wanted to go through it. It's about a guy named Wally Gordon. I don't know much about Wally Gordon's background, right? But this article was published in Medicine, Conflict, and Survival. And, you know, it's an academic article, something I came across on JSTOR, and I wanted to, make sure that I never heard of medicine, conflict, and survival. So I had to do a little research. So medicine, conflict, and survival it's an international journal for all those interested in health aspects of violence and human rights. And it covers topics such as the causes and consequences of war and group violence, the health and environmental effects of war and preparations for war, especially from nuclear, radiological, chemical, and biological weapons of mass destruction, the influences of war and preparations for war on health and welfare services, and the distribution of global resources, the abuse of human rights, its occurrence, causes, and consequences, the ethical responsibility of health professionals in relations to war, social violence, and human rights abuses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So those are some topics that it covers. Now, this particular article, Capitalism and Violence, was published in 1997, right? But what was spoken, it could have been written in the 1800s. The ideas that are put forth in this article is still relevant because we're still dealing with capitalism today. So it helps us understand that impact. So I'm going to go through this article a little bit and then transition into another piece. So he says, despite the pernicious effects of capitalism, huge numbers of people support this iniquitous system. That's a great way to put it. Iniquitous system. I like that. And let me pull this on the screen. I'm going to put this on the screen so you guys can check it. Hey, peace, Toronto. See you soon, Toronto. I'll be back in the mix. And I'll put this document in our Google Drive as well, so that you all will have access to it. I'll put it in there. So the competition, I'm here on the second sentence, the competition encouraged by capitalists and their government fractures community spirit, and the winner of economic competition imposes suffering on the losses because they do not have what they need. The indignity, frustration, resentment, and anxiety impel the losers to become violent. Capitalism means violence. The pollution of environmental violence, the militarism of political violence, the maintained unemployment of structural violence. Capitalism must be eliminated. I mean, I couldn't agree more. But since critical problems due to social and economic inequality are global, an organization representing all the people on Earth is required to address them. The collective ownership of natural resources and industry and public control of production, distribution, and services must be seen not as a system which is isolated, but as a form which can be effective only as one of the connected parts of the global system of social justice. Capitalism must go, taking with it excessive automation, inequality, and violence. All right, stop there for a second. I think one thing I want to mention when it comes to creating a more equitable system, like a system based on collectivism, communalism. It can't exist side by side with capitalism. I don't think, and the same goes with capitalism. Capitalism can't exist side by side with socialism or communalism or collectivism, right? Any sort of system that doesn't involve the oppression and exploitation of another group of people. And this is why the West is constantly at war with those who are organizing the people into a collective, right? Those people have historically been labeled enemies of the West, whether it's the United States, Britain, and so forth. NATO itself was created as a balance of power to communist Russia, right, to prevent the spread of communism throughout Europe, but also around the world. This was what the Cold War was all about, preventing the spread of this collective system. And I say that to say is that we're going to constantly be at war. There's no just separating from the empire, from the colonizer, and think that we can go live in Africa or live, on our own land and live in peace, right? We're going to constantly, we can see any state that tries to that is quote unquote independent, that has a government that is operating, that nationalizes the resources, that aligns themselves with any socialist or communist ideology or state. America attempts to undermine it. They'll send the CIA, they'll send economic hitmen, all types of people to go into these countries to create internal conflict and to incite a coup d'etat, to incite an overthrow of the government, the legitimate government. So this is something to keep in mind, right? So we have to always prepare ourselves to, not just defend, but we may have to be on the offensive as well, making sure that we develop a society, an institution that is strong enough to repel any type of infiltration, but also to overthrow and destroy systems of oppression and exploitation around the world. And that's going to be a long process. I don't even think we're not close to that, but it's a mindset we have to have. We have to have that mindset. Well, let me continue on with this. Yet violent conflict. Oh, wrong one. Get back into this. I'm just going to read a couple more paragraphs. In the current economic system of the Americas, Europe, and many other parts of the world, private individuals or corporations own the means of production and distribution. These exploiters profit from the work of their employees, whose payment is not determined by the value of their product. They maintain a pool of unemployed with whom they bargain for labor as if the workers were inanimate objects. They are indifferent to poverty, pollution, and environmental deterioration. Advanced technology, instead of being a benefit to everybody, has reduced the need for workers. These features, which cannot be repeated often enough, are well known, yet a huge bureaucracy and millions of shareholders approve and maintain this iniquitous system. Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, with meaningless differences, are joined with big business to form a regulatory machine satisfied to promote their interests at the expense of other human beings. And that's another thing about capitalism. The advances of technology, you would think would create a more equitable system, more equitable world, right? Be able to eliminate exploitation, be able to eliminate poverty. You would think the advances in technology would do all of these things, but the advances in technology only deepens the oppression and exploitation of the working class. It has historically done that, though, so it shouldn't even be a surprise. If we study history and we look at technological advancements, I mean, what has it done? And the actual oppression and exploitation of African people and indigenous people is actually, they represent the startup capital for the investment in these technological advancements. And these technological advancements came some of the advancements in technology was done so that it can deepen the exploitation of African people, as far as like being able to transport more Africans from from the continent to the Americas, right? So advancements in shipbuilding, right? The steam engine and things of that matter. So being able to transport goods and products, which included African people. The cotton gin, for example. The cotton gin was created, and what did that do? It exploded the production of cotton, which means that we need more cotton to produce, so we need more Africans, more labor to be able to pick this cotton. So now that caused a demand. The demand in cotton increased the demand in labor, which means it expanded slavery throughout the Deep South. So at that time, during the antebellum period, even though the transatlantic slave trade, the trade of Africans from the continent to the Americas was abolished. Like, that became illegal according to Britain and the United States law. That was illegal. But Africans still were coming over to the Americas in the hundreds of thousands illegally into the United States, Brazil, and so forth. But also it increased because of this increase in like this intensive labor and this increase in demand for field hands. The internal trade in the United States exploded. So you would see the high population of Africans that were in Virginia and in the Carolinas, those Africans being traded to the Deep South in places like Alabama, Louisiana. I don't mean to go off on the, well, I'm not going off on a tangent, but going deep into this history. But I'm just making the point of, these technological advancements, how it doesn't improve the quality of life for the masses of people. Even I'll give another example, one more example. Let's just think about the demand for cobalt. What is the demand for cobalt, the demand for coltan doing with the advancements in technology such as computers and so forth, right, and phones, right? That is deepening the oppression and exploitation of Congolese people and other Africans who may be in the Congo, right? It's creating internal conflict, right? And it's going to get even worse for those people. And so at some point you will see the quality of life of many Congolese go up as a result of this, but it's going to be at the expense of millions. Right now, it's at the expense of millions of African people, right? So this is capitalism. I want to pivot to this other article real quick before I get into Dr. Emerson Wilson's book. This is an article just again bringing out how capitalism produces the black criminal. It produces violence. It produces the crime. First of all, capitalism, colonial capitalism, is a criminal system in itself. And there was someone who even I want to read this post that someone put on the page. I'm gonna get to that in a second, but let me stay focused. So I'm gonna pull up this article. It's conflict in the slave community. So this article right here, conflict in the slave community. I'll come back to this page in a second. So it was published in 2008. Violence among slaves in upcountry South Carolina. Jeff Ford. So in this article, he goes deep into looking at the violence among enslaved Africans that isn't usually talked about or covered, and I guess like just trying to bring a nuance to conflicts that happen based on property, though, based on I don't want to say class, right, because that's a terrible way to put it, but possessions, right, based on how much Africans possess, because there was disparities within the African community. which had a lot to do with what skills some Africans had as opposed to others. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of this just to give you an idea of how, you know, even the enslaved under the system of capitalism, you know, this kind of represents a microcosm of what, you know, we will later see throughout the United States and later on in Black history. So I'm going to start with this last sentence. Yet violent conflicts did erupt among slaves in the South Carolina upcountry. Why? Some disputes originated in disagreements over property. The scholarship between those who have and those who don't have, right? The scholarship on the informal slave economy has mushroomed in recent decades. Most of this literature has focused on the Low Country, where the widespread use of the task system afforded many bond people sufficient hours to tend their own garden plots or raise livestock. As Southern Claims Commission records demonstrate, many Low Country slaves accumulated impressive amounts of property. Even in the upcountry, where the task system was not as frequently enjoyed and where limited available land precluded some masters from supplying bond people with their own provision grounds, slaves engaged in independent production for market, earned an income, and purchased consumer goods. Masters increasingly uncomfortable with slaves' fiscal freedom responded by imposing restrictions designed to curtail slaves' autonomous economic behavior, but upcountry bondspeople nevertheless continue to amass property of their own. And I think this is a good point to make in regards to what was just said. Like the restrictions, like racism itself, you know, is a restriction where it doesn't allow you to compete fairly. First of all, we need to wipe out this competition over resources. But I think it just speaks to within the system of capitalism, because there's supposed to be finite resources and we're competing over these finite resources. People don't play. I mean, the reality is that, you know, the colonizer isn't going to play fair because he's looking out for his own interests. And what happens is, you know, we adopt that for the colonized adopts the philosophy of the European. But because, you know, we have been restricted due to racism, rather than organize and work collectively among ourselves, we adopt the colonizer's mindset and we begin competing with each other, right? And the colonizer is going to exploit those divisions. You know, once he see that, you know, he's going to look and see, okay, these people he done that during the Black Power movement that we had here. You know, this group doesn't like that group. All right, I'm gonna show favoritism. I'm gonna show favoritism towards, or give more opportunities to certain people based off of whatever, you know, preference. I like this person, or, you know, there may be some kinship, all types of reasons, but it creates a divide amongst the oppressed. And so we end up becoming our own enemy as a result of that. One second. All right, so just going to read a little bit more of this. Some spot masses. Oh, okay. Masses increasingly uncomfortable. Okay. Lawrence T. McDonald suspects that slave participation in market activities as producers and consumers fostered division in the slave quarters. He detects an incipient class division among slaves, haves and have-nots in South Carolina. Those who were less economically successful resented those who had accumulated more or better consumer goods, and thereby amplified their status in the quarters. Dylan Penningsgrove research likewise confirms that disputes over property and property ownership undermine slaves' sense of community. Right, and this, you know, some of you may find this informative and enlightening, because we kind of don't think about those divisions amongst the enslaved, the field, whether they field hands, right? Or among themselves, people who have skills and are able to, so the slave master is able to rent out their enslaved African and earn some resources. The enslaved African is able to earn some resources for himself and the slave master due to the skills they have. But those divisions, amongst the enslaved Africans, we sometimes, overlook that, or we just don't see it. We kind of like may look at the slave community as homogenous, or get into like Malcolm X's division of, okay, the field hands and the house, the house Negroes, right? Those who were that lived in the master's house, and that's the dichotomy we create. But not seeing that, okay, there was divisions amongst the field, like the masses, right? No different than today, right? The colonized within our communities, right? There's so many different divisions, man, whether over ideas or whether it's, class divisions and so forth, right? Although we all are victims of white political and economic domination. Interesting. So, same thing. I mean, I find it interesting. I find it enlightening. I find it very informative. But knowing this is like, okay, all right. So what do we need to do? How do we overturn these issues, these problems, right? Because when we talk about, colonial capitalism is the cause of the black criminal, creates the black criminal, then we have to create systems to oppose that. We have to create a system and systems that is going to counterbalance the colonial capitalism that is causing genocide and destruction within our community. And so that what happens, or what we need to do, is begin to define the system itself as criminal, right? Capitalism is criminal, and those who practice capitalism is criminal. That's how we have to begin to define them and the system, right? And get enough power to be able to do something about criminals. Because what do you do with criminals, right? And I think, like, when you go to like Bob Marley, I pulled this. I was thinking about Bob Marley, and just thinking about the European system that was created. And this is what Bob Marley said.
Every law is illegal.
Every law is illegal.
Every government upon the face of this earth today is illegal.
I mean, facts, man. Facts. I mean, make it plain. Make it plain. Every law, colonial capitalist system that has been put in place was put in illegally. I mean, European has settler colonial states all over the world. Israel is not the only settler colonial state. United States of America is one. So, so once we begin to define the system like that, we can get into the business of doing things that are going to help us liberate ourselves. That means we have to, if we're dealing with a criminal system, that means we have to be self-determined. And the onus is on us to be able to free ourselves, because nobody else is going to do it for us, right? So that takes me back. I'm a pivot from this article, and it takes me to something that Huey P. Newton said, right? And then I promise I'll get into the book, because I know I've been like 40 minutes in. Y'all probably like, hold on, where Doc Wilson at? But I wanted to, go to this because I think there's a certain mindset we have to develop to be able to get into the business of liberating ourselves. And so Huey P. Newton, in defense of self-defense, one of my favorite quotes, I'm going to pull up here. So, Huey P. Newton, he I don't think too many people said it any better than Huey right here. So he said the power structure inflicts pain and brutality upon the peoples, then provides controlled outlets for the pain in ways least likely to upset them or interfere with the process of exploitation. Right, so even when we're talking about intercommunal violence, that's something that it really doesn't interfere with the system. It actually contributes to the system, especially through mass incarceration, the people, and through the destruction of our own communities. The people must repudiate the channels established as tricks and deceitful snares by the exploiter oppressors. The people must oppose everything the oppressor supports and support everything he imposes. If Black people go about their struggle for liberation in the way that the oppressor dictates and sponsors, then we will have degenerated to the level of groveling flunkies for the oppressor himself, right? And this may not be a popular statement right now, but the elections is a prime example, man, and how our people, we have people, bourgeois folks, bourgeois thinking, people aspirations to be bourgeois, trying to make us feel bad for not supporting a certain candidate. I'm not even saying any candidates' names, man, but it's on both sides, Democrat and Republican, right? It's like you have to support one or the other. But Black folks, are going crazy over the Democratic candidate, right? But this goes back to what Huey is saying right here, right? Us going through our struggle thinking that the ballot box is going to liberate us or free us. Or they may be under many of them are probably under the idea that we are a free people. That the struggle right now is just to deepen the integration into the system, that there's still some barriers. But, many of these people, they don't even think that there's any. They feel like, okay, there's some racism, but they feel like, we have more opportunities than we ever had. All we have to do is just like get an education and just like toe the line, right? They have no problem with the system as it operates, as long as they can have a piece of the pie, as long as that there's no barriers for them. Talking about Black folks, there's no barriers to keep them from being able to get a piece of that cake, to sit at that table. And so that's their struggle, to be a part of the empire. And so they try to make, us, they try to, first of all, they're trying to control the narrative, which they have done a great job at. You can see, like, we can have these conversations. Many of us have these conversations about radical politics, and there's not too many people that will be a part of these conversations. Even if I had like a Cornel West, on this channel, it may do a few thousand views, but if I had, T.I. or one of these other, or some of these other like folks, Candace Owens or somebody, man, numbers probably would be crazy, out the roof, right? Because these people aren't talking about, overturning the system of colonial capitalism. They're with sustaining this system. I know a lot of y'all been going in the chat too, man. I don't want to miss any of this. So I'm gonna pause for a sec and then finish this Huey Newton quote. But I definitely wanted to acknowledge the points that was made. Yeah, and capitalism encourages individuals to be materialistic consumers, making us aspire to unrealistic and often unattainable lifestyle. Yeah. Hold on. I've seen that similar. Is that a quote, or that's just great minds think alike, because yeah, that's what it definitely does. Let me see. Capitalism in its wake generates massive inequality and poverty, conditions which are correlated with higher crime rates. Indeed. Appreciate the quotes. Domination is a social problem. Domination creates social problems. That is crime, drugs, weapons. Yes, indeed. I unite, man. I unite. Hey, peace. Methinks we must rethink the way we perceive money, or come with alternative ways to trade among ourselves. The system keeps us in perpetual bondage, mainly due to our fixation on the money as it stands. I'm for the abolishment of money. That's my stance. But I know like we got a long way to go before we get to that point. But if we can just think of ways to think of systems that sustainable systems that we can create without the use of money, I definitely like the source-based economy, resource-based economy. I had to see like different models of the resource-based economy. But I think like that's a way to go. But the mindset of capitalism, people have been so ingrained into this system that we're a part of. They can't even fathom or conceive anything outside of the colonial capitalist system that they're part of. They'll think you're crazy once you start coming up with ideas that are outside of the box. Oh, you just mentioned in conscientism, and Krumah discussed that in non-socialist societies, there are two strata that corresponds to the oppressor and the oppressed, the exploiter and the exploited. That is essential for that relation as some as between masters and slaves, not to mention the monopolization of African resources for the capitalist nation. It perpetuates underdevelopment of African society. Yes, indeed. Like the relationship that we have is going to be constant underdevelopment. I was just reading something. What was the article? It was talking about like Black, not necessarily wealth, like the income of Black folks. Like Black people are doing better off economically than they were in the last few years, or even in the past. Anytime in history, Black people are doing better off economically, but it says that the wealth gap is growing. Right? The wealth gap is growing. So going to the point of underdevelopment, and that's why I was making the point earlier too about Congolese people who live, or people, because there's people who come, Africans that come into Congo for work as well. That may not be Congolese, but in Congo, though that over time there are going to be people, Africans in the Congo, who are going to benefit from the relationship that they have with foreign states such as China, Britain, America. Through the exploitation of their resources, but it's going to be at the expense of the mass population of African workers. So there's going to be a quote unquote like middle class and Black petty bourgeoisie that will be created, that has already been created, right? But you will see that grow over time. But most African people there and around the world will not benefit from this relationship. And that's that underdevelopment. And those in Congo will develop at a slower rate than the countries that is exploiting it for its resources. So that is what's going to happen. That's the long run. And how can I be confident in saying this? Because I know the history. I've seen the history. It has already happened. It's been happening through this relationship. I don't expect anything to change unless there's a revolution, unless there's a dismantling of this international system or connection that Africans have with the colonizer. So let me jump. I'm going to finish this up and then get into some Dr. Emerson Wilson thoughts. Yeah, so I'm going to go here. When the oppressor makes a vicious attack against freedom fighters because of the way that such freedom fighters choose to go about their liberation, then we know we are moving in the direction of our liberation. The racist dog oppressors have no rights, which oppressed Black people are bound to respect. As long as the racist dogs pollute the earth with the evil of their actions, they do not deserve any respect at all. And the rules of their game, written in the people's blood, are beneath contempt. A favorite quote by Huey P. Newton. He got a lot of powerful ones, but that one right there, always that always keeps me on track, man. Make sure that I want to make sure that I'm always following that logic right there. So I want to just quickly pivot into Dr. Emerson Wilson. I'm looking at chapter 4. Where am I at? Right here. Chapter 4 in the book, Black on Black Violence. If you do have access to the Google Drive, this book is located there, but I will make sure that I share that link before I close out. But I want to get into the part where Dr. Wilson is talking about the internalization of white racism by African Americans. So he says the Eurocentric projective self-fulfilling prophecy can only be actualized with the unwitting collusive participation of its intended victim, the African American population. The introjection of Eurocentrically falsified African images into the collective African American personality can only occur when African Americans themselves accept those falsified images as fact. Only when the lie is accepted as truth, only when a false projection is seen as a fact by virtue of its having been put forth by the ultimate validators of truth and reality, the ruling white Americans, can it be internalized and utilized by targeted African Americans to accordingly structure their personalities and interpersonal relations in ways that permit white American projected expectations to fulfill themselves. This always takes me back to the boys' double consciousness, man. When I hear, the talk, this falsification of African consciousness, right? That Dr. Wilson talks about. He wrote a whole book on it. But these images that has been created, of us by the European, and we adopt those images and see ourselves through that lens. And so many people, the boys talked about how, this black woman who I was looking at this image in a crisis newspaper of a black woman with dark skin, and she's supposed to be somebody who's proud to be a Negro, but she's complaining about the picture because she thinks that the woman's picture, the skin is too dark, right? That's the the internal conflict that we have. Even those people who profess that they are proud to be black, and there's still that underlining inferiority sort of complex that keeps black people from really wanting to embrace their Africanness, man, and constantly pushing to running away from their Africanness to be to assimilate into European society. Crazy thought I just had, man. But this is with Dr. Wilson. When I'm just thinking about it, I'm sorry. It's just like, damn, man. We done felt this is menticide. This was Dr. Bobby Wright talks about. It leads to our extermination. Menticide leads to our extirpation. It leads to the extermination of Black life. So when the genocide that takes place whether it's the colonizer directly committing it through ethnic cleansing, or through structural violence, or indirectly, and the way that it happens indirectly is through creating these false images of African people and us adopting it and then looking at ourselves that way, looking at ourselves as less than, looking at ourselves that low self-esteem, not wanting to be a part of the community, separating yourself, based off of these false images that you have adopted from the colonizer. So I think, like, Dr. Wilson, he deepens this in this chapter right here. I continue. He said, this acceptance of false images by African Americans is made all the more easy and efficient by the fact that information, whether true or untrue, is almost completely controlled and manipulated by white American academic and propaganda establishments. Information which belies the stereotypical and accepted views of African history and culture, which refute false perceptions of the African personality and mental capability, were and are severely repressed by the white American psychopolitical establishment. With no alternative information readily available to it, or having such information invalidated by the white American academic establishment and press, the African American community was and is left to fall under the influence of negative Eurocentric stereotypes. Consequently, many in it seek to alienate themselves from anything African, seek to identify with white Americans and other ethnic groups. Others, by various maladjusted means, seek to escape the curse of being born Black. And even like now in this age where you have the internet and, you can kind of like decentralize the control over information, the flow of information, to an extent, because we don't control these platforms. But to be able to dispense information widely and broadly, and to be able to do that, and the control of that, which is a double-edged sword to that. But at the same time, we're behind. We're behind because we have to undo centuries of miseducation, indoctrination, manipulation, and so forth. Right. So. So many, it has been the way that we view ourselves, and it has been like it's a part of our culture now. So it's been like passed on from generation to generation, and so we're trying to undo that. Like, my mother would be talking about breaking generational curses, getting religious about it, so that's something that's the work that we have to do now. But even doing that work, we're going up against the machine. And so because, where I stand, sort of like how I'm seeing it is, even with like platforms such as this, right? We Charge Colonialism. We can come with this information, but I'm competing with people who are rather tap into a CNN, rather tap into MSNBC, rather tap into Fox. They rather tap into, read the New York Times and so forth. Like these people, BBC, these are looked at as more credible to a lot of these, a lot of our people as well. And so, for the most part, that's what we're competing against. So it's that constant struggle, and it's easier for people who already sort of have like a or sort of quote unquote like conscious, and it's easier to like have those people gravitate to these channels, but that's not the majority of us. So hence a combination of, going back to the book, hence a combination of exploitative white American projective self-fulfilling prophecies and related actions relative to the African American community in conjunction with African American credulity actualized within the collective African American psyche, a falsified and painfully negative self-image. The identification with or attempted avoidance of the existence of that negative image generates and sustains a variety of maladjustive, reactionary personality / communal lifestyles and orientations which aid and abet the domination of the African American community by white Americans. It should be noted here that the discovery of an identification with a true and positive basal African self-image is severely punished or negatively reinforced by the ruling white American establishment, which recognized that such an identification would provide a basis for the liberation of African Americans from white ruling class control and exploitation. And that's why they push back on something like a critical race theory, right? Or African-centered schools or African-centered education. You know, those sort of things get pushed back because it's a threat to the status quo. So additionally, such an identification with a positive African self-image by African Americans, if widespread, would challenge and very possibly overthrow the white American socioeconomic, political hegemonic establishment. Consequently, the existence and active acceptance of a basically positive and realistic African identity must be obliterated, must be associated by the white American establishment with withdrawal of its paternalistic affection for African Americans, associated with pain and possible annihilation, thereby making movement towards such identification on the part of African Americans, vulnerable to overwhelming conscious and unconscious anxiety attacks. The reactionary taking root within the collective African American psyche of falsified personality formations and orientations supportive of its exploitative domination by others, particularly white Americans, require that each African American internalizes and acts out negative attitudes towards other African Americans. The reactionary African American then becomes prone to expressing the same or similar attitudes and behaviors toward his fellow victims and himself as they are expressed toward him by his white American oppressors. At this point, he identifies with his oppressor and unwittingly enters into an alliance with him to exploitatively suppress the optimal adaptive viability of his own ethnic group. Man, Dr. Wilson, boy, telling you, this is he was the one. He was the one. Make sure our children are studying Dr. Amerson Wilson. I think we need to fight to have Dr. Amerson Wilson. I mean, what y'all think? I was going to say fight to have these books in the public schools and have them taught, but I don't know. That might not be the smartest thing. Sometimes I'll be thinking like, any means necessary. We gotta do. It's urgent. It's dire times. We gotta do whatever to get this information to our people. But maybe that might not be the smartest move. But I guess I would say that we have to do a better job of creating institutions outside of the colonial institutions and bringing our youth into those spaces. All right. So I'm excited, like even where I'm at, the school I'm at in New York, just started a Saturday program. Well, about to get a Saturday program started. Not necessarily for the babies, but for the community and for for about adolescents on up, and bringing them into political life. Really, just having the political education, but putting into practice. How can we put these ideas into practice? And so that's what we're going to be doing in New York, and teaming up with various organizations to make that happen. But here in Philadelphia too, where I'm at, one of the things that I'm going to be working on is connecting with an independent African-centered school. I prefer independent, and I want to work on helping bring resources into the school. We have an established school, and we know a lot of the contradictions that they have is funding. So that's something, and I'm saying all this to say that let's make sure that we are finding a way to support, our institutions, whether it's educational institutions or political institutions, with our skills or with our resources, even if it's like just promoting the institution through our social media. Let's find a way to just like really build this. I'm going into 2025, man. You know, not saying that I feel like I've been doing the work, but I got to take it to another level, and that's what I'm on now, man. Just like really taking it to the next level, and you know, building bridges with as many folks as possible. Let me see. I feel like, all right, man. I'm going to I'm gonna wrap up because I ain't gonna lie, I gotta travel in the morning back to New York. I bounce back and forth. Before I even started this, I literally got home from I'm in Philly now, got back from Brooklyn literally like an hour before I even did this podcast. So but it was scheduled, and I was like, damn, I'm gonna knock this out. And then I'm going back to Brooklyn in the morning, man, going back to work. So as much as I want to, you know, I love doing the work, but sometimes you have to like really, you know, look out for your health, make sure that you get your rest. And I do forsake that a lot of times, man, and I pay for it. But I'm glad I had the opportunity to at least, you know, get this in, because it's been months since the last time. I just did one last week, trying to be consistent. But prior to that, it probably been about 3 or 4 months before I touched on this book. And I still got to get back to Blueprint for Black Power. But you guys keep supporting, man. Y'all keep tapping in. And I want to see this comment about the Black bourgeois. The Black bourgeois has always been the antithesis to Black liberation. Always been the antithesis to Black liberation, because capitalism itself is the antithesis to Black liberation. As long as we chasing that bag, you know, we gonna help sustain the system, man. We're gonna sustain the system. And my thing is like, you know, let's acquire the resources, because we have to survive, but having some sort of strategy in place or plan of action to use those resources for your survival, but also to advance the movement for liberation, to advance the revolution, man. At the end of the day, that has to be a part of what you're doing. Shit, I mean, I work in academia, right? I don't work for an institution that's about revolution or liberation, but I'm going to take those resources and I'm going to help fund an organization, take those resources and be able to, you know, find time to do these podcasts, invest into this institution, helping this expand, and how can we be better at this? So, you know, that's how we have to operate, man. You know, somebody had I had posted something about reparations and like if we engage in political struggle, if these people who profess to be our leaders are not talking about reparations or separation or liberation, then, you know, they're working against the liberation movement. They're working with the colonizer, right? They are an enemy to our liberation. And you know, the response was, how does reparation help to, I guess, like move us towards African liberation? And I mean, I get the comment, but that's kind of not like what I was getting at with that, you know. It was more so like, I can respect a leader who is at least like fighting to address a past harm, more than somebody that's like not even trying to address the atrocities. You know, I can respect that more than someone that's not, even if that person is not necessarily talking about revolution or overturning the system. Like, that's somebody I can have a conversation with, though, you know, and see if, all right, maybe some more political education and see how we need to go further. But it was more so a point to point out those leaders, understanding like those people who are just like trying to go along with the system and forget the past and like let's just move forward. These are people, these are neo-colonialists, man, at the end of the day. There's white power and blackface. And I think we have to be, pay attention to those people who claim to be our leaders. So yeah, oh my man, Ills Wills, man. Hey Ills, you there, man? Can you close this out? I ain't no pressure, but Ills, if you could close this out, man, cause you amazing. I'm gonna see if you're gonna if you're gonna bite the let me see. I'm gonna throw the bait. I'm gonna see if you bite, Ill. He gonna do it in the chat. I was gonna bring you up. I'm gonna see if you take the bait. But that's my man representing North Philly Peace Park, and I represent Philly Peace Park all day. You know what I'm saying? I'm a proud member of that community as well. You know, but I appreciate like Philly Peace Park. They out here taking the land, taking back the land, right? As we should. And I think they represent a great example of what we can be doing. If we all was doing that, we would have so many, peace parks or land spaces under our control, right? Liberating space, man. So I love it. But shout out to you, shout out to the Peace Park. And y'all gonna keep me going. Let me see. Nothing reform does can liberate African people. It's actually a tactic of self-preservation. That's a fact, man. Self-preservation. So self-preservation, and I understand like when we're talking about self-preservation, a lot of people are making decisions based off of that. And this goes back to what Malcolm told us, because we kind of have to go against that law of nature to be able to liberate ourselves, which and just to or to articulate that better, but we have to go against that in order for us to like really get down to the business of again liberating ourselves. So Malcolm said, if you're not willing to pay the price of free, hold on, I'm about to butcher. I ain't gonna butcher Malcolm. I don't do that. Malcolm X said, if you aren't ready or willing to pay that price, you'll still be walking around here second class 20th century slaves. But he said before that, he said you have to be willing to pay that price. And the guy asked him, what price is that? The price of freedom is death. All right, the price of freedom is death. And if we're not and so going to this point that's being made by Nkrumah, this tactic of self-preservation, many people, they just want to survive. And I think this is what you're getting to at with this quote in Nkrumah, if I'm not mistaken. But people, they'll survive. They'll live. These are people who will live on their knees. You know what I'm saying? Like which goes against the quote from the Bible, but I always quote Last Poets for woe is those who struggle, for oppression is worse than the grave, for it is better to live and die for a noble cause than to live and die as a slave. Right? But you have people who are willing to live on their knees. You know what I'm saying? As long as they can survive. And these are people that, again, we have to watch out for. These enemies state, and these are people that the colonizer will prop up in front of us and call them leaders. These are people that they don't feel threatened by. It's funny. I was on the podcast earlier, and I missed the conversation but they were talking about Jalen Brown, and Jalen Brown. I don't know if y'all saw the interview, but he said some powerful things. And Jalen Brown is not a revolutionary. I'm not saying that. But the points, the principles that he was standing on, I can unite with. He said, he walking in his truth. He didn't care that somebody thought he wasn't marketable because, he wouldn't toe the line, that he wouldn't behave and act a certain way. Right. But that's our leadership. Africans, they will toe the line and behave the way that they feel that isn't threatening to the colonizer, because they're trying to advance. They're trying to climb the social ladder. And so they don't want to ruffle any feathers. Yeah. Reparations is a tactic of reform. Reparations is a tactic of reform. The thing about reparations, and the way that I, feel as though if we are talking about reparations, it's the same approach with like voting, or any sort of reform. If there is a tactic, if there's a strategy behind it, where we're using this as a tactic for our liberation, and not like this is the end game. And again, trying to, we want reparations so we can make amends, or restore some sort of like restorative justice sort of thing, and continue to be a part of the empire. Like that, no way in the world, man. That can't be the end game. That can't be the objective. The objective has to always be separating ourselves, man, from the system. It's a colonial system at the end of the day. There's no way in the world we should want to be a part of it. We shouldn't, from the very beginning, we should not have assimilated. I think our leaders were mistaken. 19th century leaders, 20th century leaders, those who fought to be a part of this. And that's because they had a different definition of the system. They did not look at the system as a colonial system. They thought it was a democratic system, and the only problem was the racial barriers that were in the way. That's how they saw it. So they felt that if we break down the racial barriers, then everything will be okay. Not that the system was fundamentally flawed. That was the issue with elites, because they believed the stuff that the white man was saying. They believe the ideas of the white. Damn, man. I wish I had it queued up, because Dr. Amerson Wilson talks about this. I think I could close out with this if I can find this exact part when he's talking about the how black people believe that white people, like the white people's constitution, it's hilarious, because it's kind of speaking to what I'm saying right now. I'm going to see if I can find this exact part though, and pull it up. Is it around here? Let me see if I can. Dr. Wilson is a beast. I'm gonna end it out with this. Y'all should enjoy this. This is going to be enlightening. Get your kids, get your children ready for this one. So when they go to school tomorrow, they're going to start kicking some Amerson Wilson to the teachers. If it's white teachers, black teachers probably get nervous too, man. But pull this up. Go around this. Again, appreciate y'all. Hey, Make sure too, y'all share this. I want to see if we can get to 3,000. And after that, we get to like 10,000. Y'all gonna love this. This is a way to end it. So I'm gonna play like 5 minutes of this Dr. Wilson. Y'all let me know how it sounds. I hope the volume is good, because when I just played it, I only could hear it on one side of my headphones. So let me know if the volume is good on this.
Why? If you'd even review your own history, you would recognize that what you call your most significant victories were gained before you gained the right to vote in 1964 and 1965. Did you vote to get the vote? Huh? Recognize what you're going on here. But someone will tell you that there's no other way. But what did we say? Power in America is based in America's corporations, is determined by those who own the means of production and who own property. Power and property ownership go together in America. No property-less people, no people who own no productive businesses are in power in America. I don't care what kind of votes they have. And recognize this, that where the power is, you cannot vote them out of power. Because those who run America's multinational corporations and run America's institutions don't run for office. They tell the people in office what to do. And therefore, if you're to wield real power in America, you must own the sources of power. And those sources mean the ownership of productive facilities and the ownership of property. And the control of major institutions and the ability to weld yourself together as a people and to control your consumption and to control your behavior in ways that you can exert your influence upon this system. But yet we get a medium that tells people, vote, vote, go out and vote. And you're going to suffer all the more as a result thereof. Yes, you got to face the reality. You got to know where it's going. Power lies in strategy. It lies in technique. It lies in alignment. You see. Why were blacks before they got to vote able to change the South? Through voting? Through alignments, through alliances, through control of their consumer rights. As you said time and time again, that to a great extent the civil rights movement was a consumer movement. It was a situation where blacks refused to spend their money in particular ways and in particular places. And by withdrawing their consumption, they were able to change the South before a single law was passed in their favor. That's right. Just the ability of black people to line up side by side and shoulder to shoulder and to march in one straight line changed the face of the South. So what does it say? Just the ability to sit in front of a door and not permit other people to pass is power. The ability to chain yourself down is power, ladies and gentlemen. Ultimately, it means that power arrives out of cooperation, out of alignment, out of strategy, and out of technique, and out of a sense of purpose and mission, and out of the ability to withdraw support. By voting in this system of domination in a way you legitimate your own domination as a people. And you have to watch it. Let's learn where power is. And that's what we're going to be talking about in Blueprint for Black Power. Where is it? We have this NAACP, this assimilationist, moralist leadership that sees the solution of black problems as involving the assimilating with people. But I just got through telling you that blacks are now more segregated than ever. So if our power depends on assimilation, we're in deep trouble. Yes. We have some group of preachers who try to tell you that the major problem in America is moral. Yes, that's why I call them moralists. That these people are stereotyped or some kind of way. And if we get them understanding, you see these little silly ads on TV, you know, stop the hate. As if this was going to change something. As if the problem is hate. If the problem is they have a wrong knowledge of who you are. Come on. Yes. That the problem is one of morals. And therefore, what we got to do is convert these white people to their own religion. And we got to make them true believers in their own constitution. And that way we will be free. You're out of your mind. Every revolution has had to deal with the issue of whether you should struggle for abstract rights or struggle for a right to meet the basic needs of the people. This was the issue that Booker was working with too. He was weighing that issue. Is the voting the really primary thing, getting black people to vote, getting civil rights the primary thing? Or should we see about feeding the people first, building an economic base, and then moving into the civil rights and voting thing? When we look at the history of other immigrant groups and ethnic groups,
hey, I'm going to put that. I'm going to put the link in the chat to this. Hey, we're going to come back and build on this. I ain't even going to spend another hour dissecting that. But he just went in right there. But that's it. Put the link to that particular speech or lecture right there in the chat. And before I go, I'm going to put the link to, just in case you don't have it, the Google Drive for our book club, where you can find Black on Black Violence and some of the other books we covered on the channel as well, if you don't have it already. So I'll put that. It's usually in the description, but I don't think I put it in the description this time. So, so with that being said, man, yo, I love y'all. Black power, African power, Uhuru, power to the people, and the struggle continues, man. The struggle continues. Get organized, get organized, get organized, and get with me. If you want to get organized, you got something going on, you know, bring me to your city, bring me to your state. Don't worry, I'll pay my own way. But hey, let's get together. Like, let's get some work done. Let's get some work done, man. But again, appreciate y'all. Yep. See you next time.